see that.
December 19, 2019, meeting of the Woodbridge Township Board of Education will come to order. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Delapietro?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Yeah, here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
And Mr. Treebwasser?
Here, please make a note that Mr. Sedana is caught in traffic.
So noted.
Thank you. Mr. Delapietro, please, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, please read the Sunshine Law as required.
Thank you, Mr. President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows. January 4th, 2019, emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Avenel Middle School and the Board of Education Administration Building.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Delapietro, please read the closed session statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempted from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters. Additionally, the board will discuss the superintendent's merits pay. Also, the board will review their self-evaluation. Any information regarding the closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
I have a motion by Mr. Delapietro. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. We'll return after closed session.
Performing tonight is the choir of Lafayette Estates School Number 25. Lafayette Estates Choir is composed of 38 talented 4th and 5th grade students who volunteer their time to develop and improve their musicianship skills as well as critical and creative thinking. Tonight, the choir will perform 3 selections. They will begin with Christmas Canon, arranged by Andy Beck. The second selection will be the classic Carol of the Bells. And then finally, Lafayette Estates Choir will conclude with the national anthem.
Please rise for a salute to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank School 25 for an outstanding performance. Do I have a motion to reconvene?
So motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Delapietro?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Sedana? Mr. Tamburello? Here. Mr. Velez?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here. Will someone make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
So motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Mr. Sedana. Are there any corrections or additions? I have a motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Sedana. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Mr. Secretary, please state for the record the notice of bids received by the board.
Mr. President, there are no bids to report this time.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Dr. Zaga, please state for the record the superintendent's reports for the month of November 2019.
Mr. President, I have the following reports to present to the board: the student registers and the security and fire drill reports, suspension reports for elementary and secondary schools, bomb threat reports, and the reports of the attendance officer.
Thank you, Dr. Zaga. Dr. Zaga, please introduce our student representative, Mallory McGowan.
It will be my pleasure. Mallory is involved and always prepared. She goes out of her way to make the most of her time at John F. Kennedy Memorial High School. Her top 3 accomplishments at the school include delegate at the 2019 American Legion Auxiliary New Jersey Girls State Summer Leadership and Citizenship Program. Duties included a mock government and help develop a party platform. She's also a captain officer in each of the 3 A's, academic, athletics, and arts. She maintains presidential honor roll throughout high school despite involvement in multiple extracurricular activities year-round. Her activities also include the academic team 2016 through 2020 two-year captain, National Honor Society 2019 through 2020, Heroes and Cool Kids 2018 through 2020, Student Council 2016 through 2020, sophomore class president, homeroom rep as a freshman, junior, and senior year. Concert choir, 2017 through 2020, and 2 years as president. Women's choir, 2016 through 2020. Select choir, 2016 through 2018, 1 year as president. Show choir, 2016 through 2020, and volunteer with Kids in the Park, 2015 through 2019 as a counselor. Mallory?
Hello. So I'm going to talk about some of the activities that the schools have been doing in Woodbridge Township. I'm going to start with school number 1. They started by celebrating Thanksgiving with students and staff enjoying a traditional Thanksgiving feast. Then they did a fall cereal collection, and they collected 239 boxes of cereal for the Middlesex County Food Bank. They also did a Thanksgiving food drive where they collected 139 bins of non-perishable items for St. James Food Bank. And they're currently collecting items to assemble their annual gift baskets for the Veterans Home in Edison. Their students are then visiting the public library to promote literacy and reading. Their holiday chorus concert was held on December 10th, and they did have their holiday gift shopping sponsored by their PTO on December 11th, 12th, and 13th. At School 19, they're running a Toys for Tots fundraiser in December, and their school is collecting approximately 30 students who will receive toys, clothes, a new coat, hat, gloves, and scarves. They're really lucky to have received donations from Kathy's Coats, and it was a wonderful experience for everyone who participated. On December 6th, their PTO sponsored a snowflake dance for all of their students, and they danced the night away with their Menlo Park Terrace friends. Their first grade students will be going on a trip to the Barron Arts Center to see the trains. At School 26, their student council is raising money for the families affected by the plane crash in Colonia. They hosted a Blizzard of Books, which is a collaborative effort between School 26 and Island Middle School, where the Island Middle School students came to 26 to read to their first grade students. Their National Junior Honor Society began going to School 24 to work with the kindergarten students, and the Sidekick students from Island Middle School have been coming to School 26 to work with their 4th grade students. On December 17th, their chorus performed their annual winter concert at IMS, and the students in art made projects that were displayed at the Barnes & Noble Center on December 12th. Then, their student council and their faculty worked with local churches to provide food for families in need for the Thanksgiving holiday. At School 29, their student council collected non-perishable food donations to start the holiday season by giving back to the community. The 4th and 5th grade student council members went to classrooms every morning to collect student donations, and 250 bags were collected in total. All of their donations were given to their neighbors at St. Cecilia's Church for their food pantry, and these donations will benefit local families. As a reward for their good citizenship, any student who donated an item was given the opportunity to participate in their school-wide Thanksgiving bingo. Finally, at JFK, on December 5th, we had our NHS blood drive, which was a really successful event. On December 6th, the academic team hosted the 3rd annual competition. Then on December 12th, the JFK Holiday Band concert happened, and the Holiday Choir concert is going to happen on January 9th. On December 14th, the Student Council hosted their Breakfast with Santa, and on the same day, a bunch of students from the choir and the band auditioned for the Region 2 Choir and Wind Ensemble. Myself, Gabriel Tevez, Philip Chun, Dia Vemaganti, Swera Aneha, Shiha Amin, Amani Adelakan, and Anena Vaneeth all made it into the Region Chorus, and Manny Ramos made it into the Wind Ensemble. The NHS last week collected socks for the homeless, and the JFK play selected their cast and crew for Footloose, which is our senior play, and it's going to be performed on March 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Mr. Gowan, quite impressive. Would you
Thank
care to stay with us the rest of this evening?
Yeah, I have to stay for my Gov class, so I'm going to
Perfect.
join my students.
It's a great way. Also, I'd like to recognize Mr. Bronsdorf, the principal of School 25 Lafayette Estates, for coming and supporting his group. Thank you very much, Mr. Bronsdorf. Superintendent's agenda, Dr. Zaga.
Mr. President, I have 15 items to present to the board.
Do I have a motion for the superintendent's agenda?
So motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Tamburello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
On item number 6, I will abstain in the name of Susan Bourdain, yes to all others.
Mr. Delapietro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
On item number 6, I will abstain in the name of Chair Sidana. Yes on all other items.
Mr. Tamburello.
Yeah, before I vote yes, I'd like to also welcome Mr. Pastorino for attending here, supporting his students as well, we missed earlier on. As always.
Thank you, Mr. Tamburello.
Yes on items, all items.
Mr. Velez.
Yes.
And Mr. Treebwasser.
I will abstain in the name Jonathan Treebwasser on item 6, yes on all other items. Policy and Planning Agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Policy and Planning Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, recommends the following 11 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President,
Mr. Harris?
I did want to note one of the items here. I apologize. Here we go. Number 9. It's concerning Census 2020. The Board of Education and the municipal government will be partnering on getting the word out through the school district on the hard-to-count communities, particularly that's children who are often undercounted during the census. There are billions of dollars on the line for our great state and our township, our county. So I want to commend the administration and the board rep for taking that role seriously over the next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello.
Yes.
Mr. Velez.
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser.
Yes. Curriculum, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Treebwasser. The Curriculum Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, move the following 9 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Molnar. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? This evening, we're going to have a presentation by Mr. Bader regarding the ACT and SAT scores.
Thank you, Mr. Treebwasser. We do have a handout as well, and this also will be available online. The first page of the handout is Woodbridge Township School District SAT scores for the class of 2019. So these are the scores from the students who graduated in 2019. We had 1,025 students. Our average in evidence-based reading and writing was 506. Our mean math score was 509. The district total average score was 1,015. The state total mean score was 1,090. And the national average was 1,059. Right below that, and again, under Dr. Zega's leadership and the board support, we give every senior in October during the school day a free SAT, which is a great opportunity. So these scores were our most recent SAT taken by students, and it is only the students on that day who are counted in this average. And on that day, we had 828 test takers. Our district average score was 1,009. The state average score of students taking the test that day was 898. And the national average of students taking the school day SAT was 936. And a further breakdown between the district, the state, and the national averages for the school day SAT. In writing and reading, we had a 502 average. In math, we had a 507 average. The state average in language arts was 450. In math was 449. And the national average in language arts was 476, and in math was 460. We also have another test for college readiness. Many students nationally take the ACT. While not as popular in the Northeast, we do have students who participate in the ACT. Last school year, we had 84 students take the ACT with scores of 80% in English, 61% in math, 55% in reading, 45% in science. Met all 4 benchmarks, was 32%. Met all 4 for the state benchmarks, was 47%. And again, we had a 5-year trends below, and we have specific scores for each area. And last year, we had students getting a score of 23.5 in English, 23.9 in math, 23 in reading, 22.3 in science, the composite district score of 23.4, the composite state score of 24.2, and the national average score in the ACT of 20.7. I want to thank the students who participated, did their best, the teachers who prepared them on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Bader. Any comments or questions from the board? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes, Mr. Tamburello, finance agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Insurance Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 10 items. This evening, I move for the adoption of the foregoing 10 items.
I have a motion by Mr. Tamburello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Delapietro. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
On item number 1, I will be abstaining under the name of Susan Bourdain. Yes on all others.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Security and safety agenda, Mr. Delapietro.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Security and School Safety Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following 3 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Delapietro. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tamburello. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Transportation agenda, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, present the following 2 items, and I make motion for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Personnel agenda, Mr. Molnar.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Personnel Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, presents the following. Tonight, I will be moving 28 items.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
I abstain in the name Valerie Henderson on items 13 and 14, yes on all other items. Negotiations agenda, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Education's Committee for Negotiations present the following 1 item. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Molnar. Any comments or questions from the public? Any comments or questions from the board? That was backwards. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
I'll abstain on the negotiations agenda.
Mr. Harris?
I will also be abstaining on the negotiations agenda.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
And Mr. Treebwasser?
I abstain on the negotiations agenda. Ms. Murphy, do you have any recommendations for the board?
No, Mr. President.
Is there any old business that should come to the attention of the board? Did you want to? Okay. Is there any new business that should be brought to the attention of the board? Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Treebwasser. I want to thank the administration, Mr. Bader, Dr. Zega, for organizing and pushing the Middlesex County Vocational Technical Schools to join us. for our annual Middlesex County Vocational Technical Schools Open House, where we had, if I'm not mistaken, 3 of the 5 vocational technical schools come to Island Middle School to present their school offerings through their guidance department and fellow students to talk about their programs to middle school, 7th and 8th grade students and their parents. So I want to thank you for continuing that tradition of ensuring our middle school students know that there are opportunities outside of our 3 high schools to attend one of the 5 Middlesex County vocational technical schools. And a much easier, lighter one, I want to congratulate 2 students over at Woodbridge High School. I don't mention them by name, but last week one of our students was accepted into the #1 undergraduate university in the world, and of course here in the United States, Princeton University. So a huge shout out to that gentleman. And then also earlier this fall, a student was accepted into the United States Military Academy, commonly referred to as West Point as well. I think that student is just hopefully awaiting confirmation and I think it's called a nomination from one of our congressional members. So congratulations to those 2 students, really phenomenal, outstanding accomplishments. And then a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the public. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Mr. President?
Mr. Molnar.
I'd just like 2 quick things. First, I would just like to congratulate you on this past year as board president. I want to thank you for your commitment. I know in January we'll be having our reorganization. We'll see where that goes. But just a job well done this year.
Thank you.
It was a difficult year. We had some issues, but we were all able to get through it working together. We will continue to do so. So I just wanted to, once again, congratulate you for this year. And then also, just to all our staff, our parents, our students, everybody out there, have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate it well and celebrate it safely, and we'll see you in 2020.
Mr. President?
Ms. Anderson.
Yes, I'm pleased to announce that our district is now accepting formal attire for our first annual free prom dress giveaway event. So we're currently accepting new, gently used, clean, modern dress donations, gift cards, coupons for prom-related services. We're also accepting new and unopened cosmetics. Our drop-off contacts, we have one at each of our high schools. At JFK, you can contact Stacy Napolitano. At Colonia High School, you can contact Crystal Mercado. And at Woodbridge High School, you can contact Stacy Huber. We will accept donations until February 28th, 2020. Thank you, and again, I would like to wish everyone a happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other comments? Dr. Zager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since this is your last meeting as official Board of Ed President, I thought we would highlight some of the accomplishments that the district has been able to do under your leadership. And this is just from last year. Last year, of course, was our first year of full-day kindergarten. Not only are parents saving thousands on half-day daycare, but in June 2019, our full-time kindergarten students tested significantly higher than the previous year kindergarten students who only had half-day kindergarten. We enrolled over 1,000 students on our inaugural full-time kindergarten class, which was about 200 students more than we usually get. We also added approximately 50 staff members. We opened our renovated Oak Tree Road School for our former Kennedy Park students. Renovations began last year on both Ross Street and Woodbridge Middle School. The new Ross Street School opened on September 4th, 2019, and that was our first new school in 50 years. The last time we opened a new school was School 28 in 1969. The renovations at Woodbridge Middle School continue, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to open that one soon. Lynn Crest Elementary School was recognized as a Future Ready school. Future Ready is an educational network that recognizes schools with exemplary technology teaching practices. We also completed our One Access in Every Classroom project. We can now have all 14,000 students and 1,500 teachers online at the same time with no interruption or delay. We currently have 1,260 active access points in our district. Also in 2018-19, we began our Woodbridge High School HVAC project by budgeting cap reserve. This project will replace the old boilers at Woodbridge High School and include the installation of a modern HVAC system. We've added cameras to our schools to increase security. We also added security measures to be compliant with Alyssa's law. Last year, our one-to-one Chromebook rollout in the high school began with 3,000 new Chromebooks. We expanded engineering to all 3 high schools. Many students took advantage of our free sports physicals that we offer in our district. In 2018, we had the first year of our random drug testing in high school to help our young people make good choices. VOTEC night continued, as Mr. Harris mentioned, for middle school parents at Island Middle School. We expanded our autism programs. We brought back CTE, which is the former work study, and it's now called structured learning experience to enable our students to be ready for careers right after high school. We moved central registration to Evergreen. We incorporated our payroll system into our SIS system, Genesis, saving us fees from our former payroll provider. Last year, we switched our substitute teacher vendor to provide better coverage when our teachers are absent. Our elementary schools now all have the expanded lunch program. Our lunch balances are on Genesis in the parent portal. We have detailed uniform contracts for all employees. We introduced a new student attendance policy and programs, and as a result, our chronic absenteeism dropped almost 3% district-wide. On the 2018-19 NJSLA testing in grades 3 to 11, our students met academic progress standards for all 8 subgroups in both math and language arts. Programs that we continued, in October 2018, we funded 12th grade SATs, as Mr. Bader mentioned. That day, 828 seniors took the SAT for free on a Wednesday during the school day. That SAT cost $47.50, so each parent saved that amount. The district ended up paying almost $40,000 to cover the 828 seniors who took that test. Over the last 4 years, our average SAT score has increased 25 points. Overall, last year, 1,025 members of the graduating class of 2019 took the SAT. Their average score was 1,015. We continue to fund our AP tests, 1 free test per student per year, and that's about $93 per exam. The district paid last year for 743 AP exams, over $50,000 in savings for parents. We expanded our AP participation. Last year, we had 727 students taking APs, which is the most ever. Last year, district-wide, we took 1,470 AP tests, which was the most ever. We had, out of those 1,470 tests, 823 were scored at 3, 4, or 5, which is considered passing, which is also the most ever. Our Lincoln Tech partnership continues. We had 7 students enrolled in that last year, and also our dual enrollment courses. Last year, we had 655 students, which was the most ever, took one of 19 college courses that we offered in our high schools. Dual enrollment started in 2014. At that point, we only had 285 students in 13 possible courses. In 2019, in June, we graduated 1,069 seniors from our 3 high schools. Of those, 898, or 84%, entered college. We're also proud of the 30 graduates who pledged service to our country and entered the military last year. This is a substantial list of accomplishments for 1 year. All of this tremendous success would not have been possible without your leadership or the Board of Ed members who volunteer to oversee the district and ensure that our schools are functioning efficiently. They sacrifice their time that could be spent with their families to attend school functions, participate in meetings, and make sure the administration and staff keep the focus on the community. Please join me in a gesture of appreciation by applauding President Triebwasser and all of the board members for their hard work.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board? In keeping with my past practice, I just want to give a quick update on environmental issues and things that are going on in the district. At School 11, the roof abatement is complete. The demolition of the building should begin Saturday, December 21st. At School 23, all classes are back into their rooms as of this past Monday. There were some minor water seepage issues coming up through the ground, and those are also being addressed. There were some, we did a smoke test at the school. We met with the, we met with the leadership of the school and their association representatives, and we committed to taking care of some things, and we have done so. We had a smoke test done, which identified 2 possible leaks, and they were remediated. We are planning on having the pipes scanned with a camera. That should be done sometime next week or the week right after the holiday. At School 18, there was an odor issue. There was a plumbing contractor, I believe, and sewer company out there, and some other issues were being addressed, and hopefully that will get resolved in rooms 29 and 30. Woodbridge Middle, all the work appears to be completed, including the elevator and the thresholds. We are hoping for a final inspection next week, and we are hoping, and we are optimistic, we are hoping that we can be back into the building for the beginning of the new year at some point very soon. Just one comment about Dr. Zega's list. Although it's very impressive, I take no credit for that really whatsoever. The true success of me being president is only due to the people that are here. The administration, the board members, and all the staff of the district. I just am the person who gets to sit here, but they're the ones that make sure that everything happens the right way. And I want to thank you all for truly being collaborative, supportive, and helping through all the difficult times. And those of you that have sat in this seat understand the amount of work, time commitment that goes unseen. And most of all, I would love to thank Ms. Rooney, who has been an outstanding support for anyone who sits in this chair and anyone who sits up here at any time. And thank you very much for all your hard work. In keeping with past practice, we will open this portion of the meeting for statements from the public. If you wish to say something, please come to the microphone, provide your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to more than 5 minutes in accordance with Regulation 1100D. Also, please keep in mind I will answer no questions until you are done so as not to interrupt your 5 minutes. Seeing no comments or questions from the public, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and as Mr. Molnar so aptly said, please celebrate everything or anything you celebrate. Do it responsibly and enjoy your holiday and time off. Everybody has deserved it well. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Bourdain. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.